If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. Thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of the serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome. Hello. And good evening to you, Nevs.
Yeah, you too, Carrie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Very well. Thank you. It was a good day. How about you?
Yeah, it was a busy day. As usual. Same story for me all the time, right? That was quite an intro for us. That was Paul Harvey in 1965. So tonight, that's what we're talking about. We don't have Moxie here. Moxie, if you happen to be watching, we hope you're feeling okay. Moxie couldn't join us tonight, but we hope you're doing well. And yeah, should we get into it? Are you ready, Carrie?
I'm ready. And I'm just blown away by this audio. 1965.
Yeah.
Think about that. That's just under 60 years ago, and the tactics and deception are the same.
Yeah, it's almost 60 years. Wow.
Right? And
wow.
And it just I think that it's always been the same. It's always been used, but I think in this particular time in our lifetimes, we're just seeing it more. It's being revealed more, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. So what we're going to do tonight is a little bit different. We did this once before when we talked about the Asbury revival. Is that the one we did? No. It was when we had the episode where we asked about why does God allow suffering in the
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
So with that, we played a clip, and then we talked about that clip, and we're going to do that with Paul Harvey too. We're going to go through each one of those segments of his speech there. Some will be longer, some will be shorter, and we'll chat about it after. Most of this is going to be conversational.
Mhm.
We won't have a lot of media to show, but we will have a little bit.
Mhm.
So we'll get into and show the intro first. Are you ready for that one, Carrie?
I'm ready.
Okay, this one is 20 seconds.
If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. Thee.
Yeah, so Carrie, what are your thoughts on that first segment?
Well, we just talked about this last week about our nation, and it's not an invasion from an enemy army. It's an infiltration throughout all of our institutions, every single one, right?
It sure
And
is.
yeah, so in that regard, he's right. And I think it's because um, we stand between the globalist complete power, the people of America. I think a lot of our government has been uh, corrupted, but we, the people, I mean, I think Russia does as well. And, that's why they hate them so much. But anyway, I think we kind of understand that now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting how he started that out, that if he were the devil, you know, he would go after the biggest thing, which is what you were talking about, the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it and that really does set it up for a lot of the things happening in the world. I think I'll talk more about that maybe with each other segment, but it's a good sort of just introduction as to how our conversation is going to go tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, maybe we'll just get directly into segment number 1. There it is. This first segment that we're going to look at is 44 seconds long. And when it's done, we'll kind of talk about the parallels in the world we see today to what he almost 60 years ago was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go for it.
So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa.
A lot packed in that
Yeah.
44 seconds.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Carrie?
Well, I want to look at the subversion of the church and, the do as you please. And, if we understand that all the institutions in our nation, all the way down to even school boards, have been infiltrated, right? The church has to be as well. I'm not saying every church, to be fair, but it's got to be the number one target of the enemy, the devil, right? And I'm a churchgoer, and I love my church, so I'm not bashing. I'm just looking objectively at some things that have happened in the church as a whole. I see many preaching only aspects of the Bible, partitioning it to suit their members or their whims, and the proliferation of the entertainianity is what I call it. it's really geared toward entertainment and lights and a show. And that's all fine and well, but it can get overboard. And I feel like we see a timid church,
Mm.
not preaching about evil or demons because that makes people uncomfortable. And it's either feel good or tailored to please. Prosperity gospel. A lot of that feel good stuff, but and then, I mean, it's nice to feel good, but I think it just needs more of a balance. But then we even showed on our recent video about episode about transgender. I mean, we pastors are saying that Jesus was transgender. So there's all kinds of weird stuff being promoted in the church, and this, do as you please. I kind of see that as like be your own God. That's kind of the like do it your way, not God's way. And that's not necessarily in the church, but that's kind of in the culture.
Yeah, it's totally in the culture.
Right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, I have some other thoughts about some other aspects of that, but do you want to share a little bit? We can go.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said the churches were timid. Is it, or how
Yeah,
did you put it? Yeah,
timid.
yeah, that's interesting to me. That probably is very true. And my take on it is like I'm thinking of Paul Harvey when he was probably writing this, that he saw infiltration early.
Mhm.
I feel like there's infiltration happening everywhere. So, like he says, if I were the devil, I would go to the churches first, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just the churches, like it's all areas of society,
Mhm.
in our schools, in our institutions, in corporate America.
Mhm.
Um, and one interesting thing that he brought up, which um, I'm going to just quick show a couple of screenshots, but uh, talking about how to say that God create that man created God, but God created man in his image.
Mhm.
There literally is a book out there that says man created God.
Mhm.
So I should have looked to see what year this was published. That
Mhm.
would be interesting
Mhm.
if it was before or after. But yeah, so that was one of the things that I found interesting,
Mhm.
is that he kind of is predicting that, because you see, like with the whole COVID and everything like that, they say trust the science, believe in the
Right,
science,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
right? Um, so yeah, and our Father which art in Washington,
Mhm.
rather than so like believing that the government can take care of you and save you and rescue you from all the trials in life. It's you should be looking to God
Mhm.
rather than the government to protect you. So that's kind of what I pull out of there.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
and
they want to replace government. They want to replace God with government.
they want to replace government with God. You mean?
Or yes, you know what
I, I
Well, they
get it.
want to, yeah, they want us to worship the government and be loyal to the regime or whatever you want to call it, and not God. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, the other statement he said, getting organized, educating authors on how to make lurid literature.
Mhm.
So, I mean, maybe I'll show it later because this was a long clip. And if we have time at the end, I'll pull up some examples of some like books that they're giving kids
Yeah.
like 10 and under, middle schoolers, high
Yeah.
schoolers.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
They're
I'm not going to show that now
pornographic.
because we did the transgender thing
Yeah.
last time and we showed a lot of that. So
They're
watch
they're
our show.
they're pornographic, these books, to
They
the
are.
point that they're actually being banned now. They're so bad. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep. Uh, So, but yeah, we covered a lot of that in our transgender show. So I highly recommend you check out our channel and
Mhm.
we had 2 parts to that. That was a really good episode. And subscribe. But do you have other thoughts on this first?
Did he mention the good is bad and bad is good? I'm confused.
Uh,
I heard the whole
yes,
thing. Okay.
yes.
So, I mean, I thought that is interesting. And there's an actual book called The Marketing of Evil.
The marketing people?
The Marketing of Evil.
Oh, of evil.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Really?
yeah,
What
yeah.
is that about?
It's about the marketing of evil that we see. I'm not trying to be,
No, is it like analysis of it, or is it somebody
well,
trying to push like here's what you need to do?
well, I mean, think about our culture. What is good today is you can change your gender. Drag shows are for kids. Don't have children, overpopulation. A war is good. We heard inflation is good, right? The
Mhm.
vaccines are good versus natural immunity. The BLM riots were peaceful protests, but they were destroying
Actually, I
cities.
have those videos.
Yeah, I mean, so all
Mhm.
that was good according to what the world says, but what is bad, they also said what were patriotic rallies and the protests, those were racist for the patriots, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then the
Mhm.
tradition, these are all bad. The traditional family is bad, right? Masculinity is toxic. Any kind of
Well,
morality means that you're
not only
square.
that, if you try to save, look at what just happened in the news last week. If you try to save people from
Oh,
a
right,
crazy person
right.
at the
Oh my gosh,
subway
right.
was it in New York?
It was in New York.
There was a Marine who subdued someone who was going crazy in the subway,
Mhm.
and uh, the person ended up dying. But this guy was like, I don't care if I go to jail. He's throwing things around, threatening people. He has all these felonies behind
Mhm.
him. Sadly, he did end up dying.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think that that was intentional. So,
No, of course not.
but they're not, rather than saying, oh, this guy stepped in to help out,
Right.
they want to prosecute him. And same with, remember that couple who had um, protesters outside their house, and they brought their guns out and stood outside with their
Right.
guns. Same
Right.
thing. Like they
Exactly.
want to protect themselves, and they're being threatened from
Yeah.
people marching down their street.
Yeah.
Uh, and you know,
They're
in the
making
pro, yeah,
examples of these people so that you'll be. It's like you're being warned
yep.
not to use your Second Amendment right. Um, uh, 50Q says that terms like mom and dad, right? Those are bad too.
Oh yeah. Hey
You know,
50 Cube. Hey Herbie. Hey, is it
we have
Miriswa?
we have Carlin Logic.
Oh, Carlin Logic.
And Marie Soie. Welcome, friends.
Yeah.
But and of course, Christians are bad, and conservatives we're homophobic and transphobic and racist, right? Right. So basically, anything and everything that goes against the leftist ideology is bad. And as far as like the marketing of people, I've never watched it, but I've seen little snippets from like Lucifer. It's a show. It's a
Oh, it's a show. I thought it was a book. Oh,
Well, I think there's a show, and I know people who watch it, and I just like I don't understand, but he's really good looking,
oh,
he's really
interesting.
charming, and so they make it look appealing.
Hmm.
And the thing is we know that Satan was like the number one angel. I mean, he was the
Well,
most
the good
most.
is bad, the bad is good. The whole world has gone mad. Everything's upside down,
Absolutely.
inside out, backwards.
Right.
Truth is lies, lies is truth.
That's right.
Uh, and yeah, like they call people burning buildings down peaceful protesters.
Mhm.
Um, and people who actually are peacefully protesting, they call them extremists, like parents who are speaking out at school boards.
Mhm. Yeah,
They were
they're
marked as extremists.
by the FBI, right? Or the
Uh,
DOJ.
was
It
it
was
DOJ or
yeah,
FBI? I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and then the claim that the Bible is a myth, or that a lot, you've heard people say, "Oh, it's just another book written by man." Like, a lot of people don't want to believe in God because that's their reason.
Mm-hmm.
And if we understand that modern translations were all translated from the oldest original manuscript in Hebrew and Aramaic, and it was validated by meticulous accuracy when they discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. Remember, between 1947 and I think 1956.
Yeah, I think it was
I mean,
around
like,
then.
word for word.
Really cool.
It really upset a lot of people that it was so accurate. And then copies of the New Testament today are not copies of copies.
Hmm.
They're transcriptions from the ancient documents written within 25 years of the original.
Oh,
Right?
interesting.
And
Yeah.
then, I mean, if you think of, I'm trying to remember.
Look at you digging on the Bible and the history. I like
Aw.
that.
And then if you look at, like, other histories, like Herodotus, the Greek histories, that was written in 430 BC, I think I recall. And the most recent copies of that were written 1,300 years after. And so you have the New Testament, 25 years, and
Mm.
then you have Herodotus. And there are only 8 copies of Herodotus, and there are, like, over 24,000 copies of the New Testament.
Wow.
Right? So it's the most authenticated historical book in history.
Yeah. I was watching something recently that talked about that, how many copies there were of the oldest version that they found. It's so interesting. Might be cool to do a dig on Bible history one day, have that as a podcast
I would
topic.
love it. Love
I
it.
would too. Mir Iswa. I sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Says Jesus Christ warned us of the Antichrist already at work in the church. That is so true.
Yeah, it is.
And let's see what did Carlin Logic say? I wonder if Paul Harvey chose to speak out in 1965 because at the time the Catholic Church was in the process of implementing Vatican II. Big changes happened in the church at that time. Really? I don't know. I don't know anything about
I
that.
don't know about that either.
Carlin, you
Gonna have
should
to have you as a
DM
guest
me on
on the
Telegram. You should join our podcast to
Yeah.
explain
Do you wanna
that.
come on?
I think you should join our podcast to explain that. DM me if you agree.
No pressure. No pressure.
and I'll send you a link. But yeah, so gosh, we could talk all night just on this first segment, and this was actually the longest one. But is there any more that you want to add around this first clip?
Well, I think that they're getting us used to seeing a lot of depravity in TV and film. It's a lot of violence. It's a lot of filth.
Do as
Even
you please. That's the do as you please part, right?
right, and it's to the point where, like, I was looking to watch a love story. I know, corny, right? But they just didn't have anything that new. I mean, the new love stories are, one of them has cancer, and or they both have cancer, and or one of them wants to get euthanized. It's like there's always something really dark as a part of it. Like, I can't think of any, so I have to go way back decades to see, not just love stories, but good movies. So they've just gotten us so programmed to, get that negative information in our brains.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so very true. That's a really good call out right there too. I mean, the do as you please stuff, they want to make they're trying. I have one more comment before we go to the second segment.
Sure.
And I think I've mentioned this so many times, but they're trying to normalize some of this crazy madness,
Oh
or
yeah.
they're trying to give the perception that it's normal and
Yes.
trying to make it normal. So like they want to change pedophilia to minor attracted person
Hmm. Hmm.
and all the transgender stuff. Like they're trying to make it look like it's everywhere and it's accepted, and affirmation of making people Like you have to affirm your child's choice of gender identity, or they could commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, next week's topic, should we go ahead and kind of
Yeah.
just preview next week's topic? We are going to talk about detransitioning.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you guys join us next week.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about how forcing kids to transition actually can make them commit suicide
Mm-hmm.
or want to,
Right.
or
But they use those buzzwords. You have to affirm it,
affirm it.
you
Yep.
know, and it has to be inclusive, all those good
Well, you know what?
words for
That's the
something
marketing
bad.
of evil. That's the marketing.
Exactly. It's everywhere. I mean, we could think of 1,000 examples. It's everywhere in our culture now.
They use marketing tactics. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Buzzwords. They try to do words that sound really nice
Yeah.
to make it sound okay.
Mhm.
Like minor attracted rather than
Mhm.
pedophile.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
gosh. We could probably sit here for 5 hours and keep going on this first segment. But anything else to add before we go to the next one?
No, we can move on.
Okay. Next one's going to be super quick. It's 8 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills.
What are your thoughts on that little segment there?
Well, I mean, that's so obvious. I mean, just look at our border with the fentanyl pouring in, right?
Yes. And
It's-
and you know, did you hear about fentanyl 10 years ago?
No.
No.
So that is pouring in, and then meanwhile, we're sending our taxpayer money to other nations to protect their borders, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And yet their opioids are pouring in, obviously the trafficking, but I looked up some statistics,
Oh, okay.
and overdoses, including opioids and prescription drugs, is the number 3 killer in America next to cancer and heart disease. And the latest statistics are that over 96,000 people overdose per year, and 7 out of 10 are the opioids.
Really?
Yeah. And, you know, this hit close to home because a really dear friend just lost a friend to fentanyl overdose. And he was a healthy guy. He didn't even hang in that crowd. And it was just kind of a one-off, you know, and this was just like 2 nights ago.
Really?
So yeah, it's really,
Oh, I
really
didn't even
sad.
know that, Carrie. Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, it just takes one time,
Yeah.
you know, and he was young. Anyway, it's really sad. So,
Yeah.
but the alcohol, you know, that's been going on longer, right? I mean, that alcohol-related deaths are the 4th leading preventable cause of death in the United States, and over 140,000 each year. They were documented from 2015 to 2019, which is more than 380 deaths per day. So I don't have the stats for right now, and especially during what we just went through. I know that they allowed the liquor stores to stay open while they closed the churches, right?
Do you know they used to have the liquor stores, at least here, closed on Sundays, and they just recently changed that in the last couple of years, where they can be open on Sundays now.
Wow, wow. And don't get me wrong, friends, I'm not trying to be a buzzkill if you're kicking back having a beer.
No,
I mean,
I like a good margarita once in a while.
this is obviously an abuse of alcohol, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then there's child abuse that goes along with this, spousal abuse, all the things. I mean, it just it's ugly.
Well, like it said in that clip, tranquilize the rest
Mhm.
with pills, and that's just kind of a reflection of it. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like pills or alcohol or whatever. You can get tranquilized through other things like um I don't know, playing video games like more than just a couple hours, like all day long, every day, you know, like 8 hours a day, every day. That's tranquilizing.
Absolutely.
You know, or binging, and you know, we all do it once in a while, but I mean, if you did it all the time, like binge watching TV show, or you know what I mean? Back to back to back. Well, I was guilty of that when I think when the show Lost was on,
Yeah.
I had to get caught up, and you know, having a marathon once in a while is fun, or watching like the trilogy
Mhm.
of a movie or something. But some people, you know, just do it all day long. Even just being watching podcasts or being on social media constantly, it's not healthy, and that's kind of tranquilizing too,
Yeah,
because
you're right.
you know, if you got to get outside and feel the
Inter
grass in your toes and
interact with people
interact with
in
people.
person.
So,
I'm
yeah, the fentanyl, I totally agree with you, by the way, Carrie.
Mhm, mhm.
Like, fentanyl's gotten crazy coming over the border. It's a huge problem. But I feel like there's other things that tranquilize us
100%.
intentionally.
100%.
Sorry, I think I interrupted you.
Not at all. No, no. This is all
Any
good.
more to add on that
No,
from
we
you,
can move
Carrie?
on.
Okay. Let's see. Our third segment is 18 seconds long. We ready?
Ready.
All right.
If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames.
Ooh, there's a lot packed in that short little clip.
Yeah.
Carrie, what are you thinking?
Well, I just can't help but think of what we've just been through with
Mhm.
COVID and how the enemy used that to polarize families, churches, and nations. I mean, look at what it did. And there's some media. Could you please pull up the media? This is
Oh,
so
yes.
sad.
Yes. I
Yeah,
forgot. I've got make sure I've got the right thing set up here.
it was a poll in January 2022, and I don't know if you can see it, but basically the red is Republican, the blue is Democrat, and it's not even about that, but it just shows you the level of brainwashing on the left is more. Um, the the first is find the unvaccinated. Like it's almost at 60% Democrats.
Oh,
Why?
is this like, are they saying I'm for it or
Yeah,
against it?
they're
Okay.
they're for it. Sorry,
Okay.
for finding them, and then we've got even more lock the unvaccinated at home, and then
Holy, I can't
right,
believe like there's even 1% of people
it's crazy. They
that would be for either one of those.
But it gets worse. Send the unvaccinated to quarantine camps. More than 50, close to 50%, almost. Take children from unvaccinated parents. About 30, yeah, about 30%. Fine and imprison critics of the vaccine.
Okay, this
Almost
is a scary
scary.
chart.
This is scary. And so, like, why do so many people support this?
Do you
I
know
mean,
what this makes me think of, Carrie?
Nazi Germany.
Obviously, World War II
Yeah, I know.
and Hitler. Like, we
Yeah,
always ask, how did people fall for and support what was happening?
yeah,
Um, and we just lived through seeing it.
yeah.
People
We did.
have been convinced uh how they really thought it was so dangerous and
Mhm,
so deadly
mhm,
that if you didn't fall in line,
mhm.
you were killing people. They literally believed that.
And where did they get that idea? Paul Harvey mentioned it, that media fanning the flames.
Media fanning the
It
flames.
was fear
Absolutely.
porn 24/7, and it literally broke up families. I had division in my family, and I know others who did. It divided our nation between vaxxed and unvaxxed. Think about it. It was just wicked.
Yeah. Gosh, this is like, that's a scary chart.
Mhm.
It's shocking, actually.
Mhm.
So even if you're wide awake and you know you've seen it, we've lived through it, we
Mhm.
saw people acting crazy.
Mhm.
Like you would go into the grocery store, and if you didn't have a mask on, there'd be people screaming at you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, and there's like a clip, I don't have it, but there's a clip of a young girl, and this was sad. Like this, it broke my heart, even though I thought it was ridiculous. She was screaming and having a like literally crying because somebody was going to get in on an elevator without a mask.
Wow.
And she had a breakdown, and she was only like 13 or 14 years old. And I'm like, is this really like, do people really, uh, can they get brainwashed that fast and that easily?
Yeah.
Like,
I
yeah,
mean,
COVID was not
we've seen
great.
it now. We've
Like,
seen it. I mean, people, we've been in, even before COVID, but a mass psychosis,
yes.
completely
So
unaware of the machine that we've been living within. But that,
I know. And people said, people used to say, oh, I would never fall for that for as far as World War II and sending people to get gassed and collecting,
they were ready.
oh, there
They
were
were,
people supporting it.
they were ready.
And it's kind of
And
interesting.
it's interesting. I read an article, it was from Epoch Times. It was about a year ago, I think, but I remember it because they actually do studies, like sociological studies on how to do that. And it's through guilt, it's through shame, it's through fear. I mean, they actually,
I think fear was the biggest thing. And
well, the shame, you're gonna kill grandma, right?
well, some people were truly fearful though.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, some pointed the fingers like
Yeah,
you're bad, you're gonna kill people, but other people were like literally like that girl who had a
yeah,
breakdown. She was literally in fear.
right,
And like you shouldn't fear anything. Uh except for God, right?
right. Don't
So,
fear man.
oh my gosh, the other thing I see, I do you have more to add about COVID and stuff?
No.
Oh, okay. This was an excellent chart, Carrie. Really good.
Terrifying.
Really good find. But one of the other things, just as far as that short clip, is families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves. It's really what I'm thinking about is division,
Yeah,
period.
yeah.
Um, I do think that through COVID, a lot of people became more divided. We were already divided from politics,
Mhm.
which is kind of crazy, but families were getting divided, and whether it's COVID or other things, but families were getting divided based on if you're not vaccinated, you can't come see me.
Oh, yeah.
This happened to me actually in my family. I'm
Oh,
not going to say who, but
yeah,
yeah, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come,
yeah.
and I'm not going to come see you either. And it's like, what?
It's so
Like
sad.
it was shocking.
Mm.
Shocking. I actually broke down in tears
Oh,
because I was so sad, but I'm going to get emotional. I'm not going to do that on the show. But
leave that to me, right? Because 'Cause I'm the one that
yeah,
always
I'm not an
cries.
emotional person, but this got to me, and
Well, of
it's getting
course
to
it
me
did.
right now a little bit. But
Aw.
uh and but it happened,
Yeah,
and like people lost friends, they lost their family members.
yeah.
And it's not just COVID anymore. It's like if you don't agree with the whole transgender movement, then if
Mhm,
you have any family um, that's in agreement or promoting it,
mhm,
they will refuse to speak to you.
mhm.
So
It's fifth generation warfare. If you haven't heard of it, it's a book by General Flynn, and it's the type of warfare that's being used now. And at its core, it is from the devil, but it is designed. It's a war for the minds and the hearts of people,
war
and
for the minds. Yep,
and
absolutely.
it's an information war. And so they polarize, they tribalize, they
Yeah.
dehumanize. I mean, We just
And the
see
media is fanning the flames.
over and over and over, right? That's why I just turn off the news, right?
Yep.
But yeah, it's very sad. But that again, it's these tactics. They're different situations, different circumstances, but they're always the same. The enemy always uses them.
Yeah. Anyway, I forget what segment number we're on.
We're on 4.
4 is next, or we just did 4?
Oh.
Here, I'm just gonna play 4.
It's yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Well, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna play 4. If this is a repeat segment, I apologize, and then I'll play 5.
Okay.
Okay, clip number 4.
If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions, just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door.
Ah. Okay, we were on 4 next. What you have any insights or thoughts on that one?
Well, we're there. We need more than sniffing dogs and metal detectors. We need like armed guards. We're there with the violence in schools, and I mean, you could see the violence without the shootings because there has been a proliferation of shootings, right? We have seen that in the schools, but the
Right.
violence in the schools of the kids beating on other kids, but also attacking the teachers, and little, if any, disciplinary action.
Yep. You're talking about kids attacking teachers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, and they don't get suspended. If I had done that, I mean, it just wasn't happening, number one, when I was in school. But if I had done, I mean, grounded or expelled and grounded. I mean, right? It just.
Yep. They're like afraid to even suspend or put kids in detention these days.
Yeah.
That's part of that whispering, do what you like.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of ties into this. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, well, they talk about encouraging schools to refine young intellects, but neglecting to discipline emotions and just let them run wild is they're actually grooming our kids, basically is my point. It's more than just emotions run wild. They're letting kids make adult decisions and hiding it from the parents. Here we go again. We're talking about the gender identity, and I just think it's huge. I think it's a huge problem, and we're going to have some pretty messed up kids in 15, 20 years, 10 years. And so I think it's more than just the letting them run wild kind of thing.
It's the whole culture. It's the whole culture in the schools and outside of the schools. It's, because the enemy loves chaos, and God is not a God of chaos. He is a God of order.
That's true.
And so the more chaos, the better as far as division among the people. But the more chaos with all of us fighting, the less we are unified together, looking at who's causing all the problems. Right.
They're trying to point fingers at each other rather than have us all get together.
That's right.
And be united and look at what's happening from officials in the government, corporate people, schools making decisions, local governments.
It's the playbook.
That's the playbook. That's for sure. Any more from you to add on that one? All right, we've just got a couple more clips. This next one is clip 5. It's a little bit longer. It's 46 seconds long. Let's go for it.
Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich.
That one's packed too.
Yeah. I was just going to focus on a couple,
Go for
not
it.
all of them. Evicting God out of the schoolhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to look back in time to the Danbury letter that was written to President Jefferson in 1801. And it was from the Danbury Baptist, a small church in Connecticut. And they were asking, this is 1801, they're asking if their First Amendment right to be free to worship was secure. You know,
Oh.
think about what people that came here had already faced, right? And they were asking questions like, will the state control what is preached? Will we be able to preach anywhere? Right. And so as president, he replied, the letter's out there, you can read it, but basically it's that right will be fully respected and protected. It is a right not from man, but from God. The First Amendment has created a wall of separation between the church and the state, but that wall is one directional. It is to keep the government from running the church.
Yes. And a lot of people may try to mix that up.
Right. And some of our founders were not Christians, as far as I can see, but they understood the value of the Christian principles, and our government was founded on a lot of those principles. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't claim to know if they were, but anyway, so they believed that keeping Christian principles out of government was not the point, that obviously. And so his words have been manipulated and misunderstood. And I mean, of course, the enemy wants the Gospels. They want the church to be, within their four walls and stay there. And they don't want it anywhere else, of course. Right.
Yeah.
Just keep to yourselves, be quiet. And let's go a little forward in time, but still back to 1960. There was a case that ended up in the Supreme Court that was in New Hyde Park, New York. And the teachers, the board instructed the teachers to lead students in prayer every morning. And the practice was voluntary. Students could opt out, get a letter from their parents. It was not a big deal. But a group of parents challenged that it was an officially sponsored prayer as a violation of the First Amendment right. And so they had a couple different court cases. They lost, but it finally went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the parents and said that it was a violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which basically is that Congress shall make no law respecting an established religion.
Oh,
okay. But was this establishing a particular religion? Was it by Congress? So, the debate still goes on today.
it sure does.
This was the prayer, though. Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon thee, and we beg thy blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. That was the prayer.
That's it.
That's it. And so my question worth pondering is, so if it's not sponsored, is it okay? And the answer is yes.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And,
now that is a good question worth pondering.
Sorry, I was slow on the button.
That's okay. So remember the football coach, Joe Kennedy, I think his name. Remember he was playing after the game, right? And he lost his job, and it was a big deal. So I met the attorneys that represented him. And
you did?
Yeah, it took because the Bakers too. They're basically it's First Liberty. It's nonprofit. They are funded by donations, and anyway, but they're pretty big. I mean, the event had Mike Pompeo at it. It was that event. So anyway, it went to the Supreme Court, and Joe Kennedy won.
And just to set context for people who might not know what we're talking about, he was a coach.
Yeah,
and
he
he was
prayed.
praying on the field after the games, and kids started joining him.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
didn't
sorry.
invite them, like they asked if they
Yeah.
could pray with him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he got fired.
And he got fired. And so he won his case, the Supreme Court. And
That was a big win last year. Wow, there were some big cases last year.
right. And so that just goes to show you that we can, that is our First Amendment right. All right. So Congress, the government can't dictate what religion or what prayer, but we can do that. That's our First
Yeah.
Amendment.
Yeah.
And so what's happened with back to Paul Harvey and subverting the church and taking God out of the schoolhouse, and is that the key is that prayer was not just removed, it was replaced. Because you can't just remove something. There's a vacuum. So something has to fill it. And it was replaced with the postmodern leftist ideology, which is you can't pray, but you can transition the kid's gender without the parents' knowledge. And you can have drag queens at story hour and et cetera, all the crazy stuff. So, and just my final thought on that is that if we look back to when things really started to decline, wasn't that the 60s?
It was with the the hippie movement and all that.
I mean, no offense, because I mean, anyway, I like the music.
That's when it happened.
But
the free love, the drugs use out in the open.
Yeah, but this case was in 1962. It's Engel versus Vitale, 1962. So
I was just a twinkle in my parents' eyes. I wasn't even on this earth yet.
and so they've been using that as, they've been manipulating it and misinterpreting it to try to keep us quiet and keep God from everywhere.
Oh, those are great insights. I love how you, pulled God into it and talked about our First Amendment right and our right to religious liberty. It's awesome. I guess for me, there's a couple of items in this section that stood out to me. One is the promotion of pornography. And I'm not going to get so into that because we've already talked to it ad nauseum. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but that really stood out to me because and he talked about judges promoting pornography, but honestly, it's every company and government institution promoting pornography. The other thing is substituting psychology for religion, and deify science. And we did see that, like when I made that comment earlier in this podcast, like trust the science. You can't go against the science, but yet scientists who disagreed with the science that was being pushed out there, like really experienced and qualified scientists were silenced and censored, and so people didn't get both sides of the issues, especially around the vaccines and the harms that were coming to people, which we are going to have a podcast on that as well.
It's huge. Well, and then was the doctor, I think his name was Kerry Mullins. He died right before. Oh, what a coincidence. But the pandemic. But he was the inventor of the PCR test. And there you can hear him in audio in the interviews saying that it cannot be used to diagnose how they were.
Oh yeah, the PCR tests couldn't diagnose COVID.
And there was, and that at 35 cycles that they were being tested on, that you're going to find COVID in a pineapple.
I heard it was like 40 cycles to start.
Right. They had it so high. It was supposed to be anyway. So doctors that, that knew they were totally science. They're coming out now. So that is good because, it's a battle. It's a
Yeah,
spiritual
it totally
battle.
is. It
It,
totally is.
yeah.
The other thing that stood out to me, and this is just a quick thing for me, is trying to take Christ out of the holidays. Christmas and Easter, making them very commercialized.
Hmm.
This started in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And uh, so, but we kind of covered that when we did our Christmas show.
Hmm.
But the other thing is, this is kind of huge because this is what is happening now. And it reminds me of a recent regulation. Is it a regulation or executive order? I can't remember which, but where it says, if I were the devil, I would take from those who have and give to those who wanted until
Ooh.
I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. So they recently are going to be, if you have a mortgage and you have really good credit, you're going to be charged a fee that goes to people that don't have good credit
Yeah.
to help them.
Yeah.
So it makes no sense. It's like, yeah, why would you be ambitious if your success is penalized?
Yeah.
It's just backwards.
It's called socialism, which is
I
the
know.
precursor to communism,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, and my last item is about the prisons
Mm.
overflowing.
Mhm.
They're not trying to solve mental health issues. Instead, people are committing crimes and they're being let out, and then they commit bigger crimes and they're being let out. They continuously are let out of prison, and
Mhm.
uh, especially the last 2 years, like they're letting serious violent criminals
Mhm.
out of prison, like
Mhm.
shortening their sentences, and it's like no explanation except, Carrie, you had a handy dandy chart that you sent me, which this is very interesting. Before I bring it up, uh, talking about school shootings, we always say guns don't kill, people kill. Um, I think there are some mentally unstable people, but I
Mhm.
also like sometimes put my not sometimes, many times I put my tinfoil hat on, and it just feels like uh some of these things might be not that the shooter is acting or got paid to go in and shoot, but literally uh went mad and went in and was shooting. And we're going to have another show on what could cause somebody to go mad and why would it increase over the years. So we'll talk about that in another podcast, but with that,
Can I
I'm
put my
going to,
tinfoil hat on for a second?
yeah, put your tinfoil hat on.
Okay, you can go back to the Unabomber, Timothy McVeigh, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of headlines that show that he was mind controlled by the CIA. Friends,
Well,
I just
that's what I was talking about, like
okay.
MK Ultra stuff.
MK Ultra. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. It was real, and they said they ended it. They didn't. But I'm going to give a hat tip to Absolute Truth. It was a video he did. I don't know when. It was some time ago. Um, and I saw that headline in there. I was like, what? So I just did my
Yeah.
own little, and it's there. It's out there. And so, yes, we'll do an episode on that.
Yeah. So this we absolutely are doing an episode on that. We've already started digging. So this chart talks about people who with that were held in a mental hospital versus a prison.
Mhm.
Now, I think early on, some of those mental hospitals, like you heard horror stories about how those people were treated.
True.
However, um, look at this. Look at how it went down to just about zero
Mhm.
in mental hospital, people being institutionalized and committed versus how many people are going to prison per this is per 100,000 adults. So it's not like,
Mhm.
yeah, the population grew, so that's why there's more people in prison. No, this is per 100,000 adults. Look
Mhm.
at that. Like it's tripled or more than quadrupled seems like,
Hmm.
for people being incarcerated.
Hmm. Well, is it the people that should be in an institution getting help that are being let out on the street and they're committing crimes and then they're going to prison, then they're being
Going
let
to
out?
prison instead of getting mental help,
Right,
like mental health help.
right.
So this is such an interesting chart.
Hmm.
Really,
And it
really.
doesn't even go up to today. I mean, can you imagine the last 20 years?
Right, that's 2001. Yeah.
We got to get another, look at it if they're even tracking it. But
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, that's all I had on segment 5. Um, are you ready for segment 6?
yes,
And just like, please subscribe, please like give a thumbs up on the video, especially if you're on Rumble, because YouTube, they're deleting our videos. So
yeah.
we might be leaving you YouTube, but yeah, come to Rumble, give us a thumbs up. And yeah, I just wanted to interrupt actually in before, because the 6th one is our last one. So I'm just going to quick put our uh, headlines on here so you can kind of see our social media. Oh, Carrie, you had it in your name. But
Mhm.
anyway, yeah, just so you know where you can find us. I don't have my Twitter on here, but I am Nevs TV at Twitter as well. All right. Are you ready for our final segment?
I am.
All right. It's 29 seconds long.
I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure.
This touched on some of the stuff we talked about a little bit earlier in the podcast, but that's a pretty powerful last segment. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts, Carrie?
Well, I was going to share just about the wealth transfer. It's happening in
Sure.
many ways. It happened during COVID, the greatest wealth transfer from um, the middle class to the elite during that period. But what you had already mentioned in real estate, that good credit buyers are subsidizing the bad credit buyers, um, and substituting psychology for religion. Psychology says be in control of your own life, be your own God, right? And faith puts God in control, and it has a submit to His will. I remember seeing a gal with a tattoo, and it read, "My will be done." And
Oh, seriously?
seriously, and I wanted to ask her, "How's that going for you?" But
I
I
would love
mean,
that.
pretty much every time I have a strong instinct to, respond to something or react, I like, okay, hold on a sec, and I like oftentimes if I do the opposite, it's a better choice. Do you know what I mean? Like our instinct, it can just be so off. um, so yeah, but that is definitely being pushed.
Wow, I can't believe somebody would literally tattoo their arm with something
Right?
like that.
I know.
That's crazy. Uh yeah, for me, the cautioning against extremes in hard work and patriotism and moral conduct.
Mhm.
This is kind of touches on what we said earlier about people being called extremists
Mhm.
who are patriots
Mhm.
or standing up against wrongs or having moral conduct. One of the things I don't think I mentioned in that segment was there's a 90-year-old man who was feeding the homeless and he got arrested for it.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know, uh, it's just like people are nuts, and
They don't want you to be kind to each
little
other.
kids trying to have a lemonade stand. So I've got this is my sparkling water, but it's lemonade flavored. Um, Little kids wanting to have a lemonade stand, like they get fined or police tell them they have to stop, or
Yeah.
you just, nothing wholesome is allowed.
And they definitely don't want us to have joy in our lives, but when we understand that joy doesn't come from external things, there's nothing they can do
Right.
to rob us of that.
Well, like I said, anything wholesome. So,
Yeah.
like he said in that segment, marriage is old fashioned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
You
know,
don't need to get married.
swinging is more fun. So,
Because the women, mostly the women that aren't, they oftentimes, not always, but there's a lot of they're relying on the government when you're,
yeah,
especially if you're a single parent. Not always, but and they like that dynamic because then we're beholden to them, right?
yeah, they don't want hard work and reward for that hard work.
Mhm.
Yeah, nothing old fashioned, nothing old fashioned I think is good, to be honest.
Absolutely.
If they're like marriage is old fashioned, yep, it is. And it's a good thing. What you see on TV is the way to be. Like so many girls are trying to emulate like the Kardashians. It drives me crazy.
It's just gross. And
It's so gross.
I started to watch something last night and I just turned it off because it was just so unnatural the way the woman, who was very attractive, but she was all bursting and just walking, so seductively. I'm like, who walks like that? You know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of like those
In real life,
drag queens.
they do. They walk like that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And yeah. And when they call it trans, it's really drag queens are like they're dressed up like clowns. They're not dressed up like women. None of them look like me. None of them look like you.
Right, right, right.
They look like clowns.
Yeah.
But anyway, I kind of totally took a right turn.
That's okay. We can do that.
But yeah, yeah, I just I guess that's my only thought. I think let's make wholesomeness great again,
Amen.
right?
Amen. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being old fashioned, being married, having kids, fighting for your kids' rights, and being mama bears and papa bears. So,
Absolutely. And it is coming back because we've seen so much wickedness. I mean, the reaction is to recoil against it. And I
mhm.
think that is a lot about what this great awakening, as many call it, is about. It's a spiritual awakening. And, and we don't have any more video, right? That was it.
No, I mean,
Okay.
I said time permitting, I'd show more, but
Okay. 'Cause
I
I think
always have too much.
okay. Yeah, you have good stuff. But as far as final thoughts, um,
Oh, should I play the final thoughts and then let's give our final thoughts?
oh, does he have more audio?
8 seconds more.
Okay.
Okay.
In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's it.
The,
Okay.
the tactics.
Final thoughts, Carrie.
Well, his tactics. Why would he change them? They work,
Yeah.
right? Unless you are aware and guard your heart and you refresh in the Word. But I mean, really, nothing has changed from the days of Noah to Sodom and Gomorrah to today. And it's kind of brutal to say, but I'm glad that we're seeing it all right now because we weren't aware really of all that was happening. It was largely veiled behind the scenes. And so
Right. They're way out in the open now.
it's in your face. And so when we see it all, I just see the battle. It's really not about right or left or Republican or Democrat, black or white. I mean, of course, they want it to be about that,
Yep.
but it's not about a political system, capitalism, socialism, communism. It's these things the devil uses, these systems and these dynamics. They are his tools. And so we have to keep them in the proper context in our lives. And I mean, we know Scripture also says the struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's about it's about the principalities in darkness of darkness in the heavenly realm. But it's really a battle for the mind and the soul of humanity. Really, it's for our souls. And and if it may look like it's winning, the enemy is winning, right? Kind of
Mm-hmm.
like you get a little down, like what, is going on. But, if we look at the cross, Satan thought he won there too. But 3 days later, he realized that he played right into God's hands.
That's
And
so true.
I just think that that is the same today. And Marisa said something here. The prince of this world is named Chaos, and it's true. He is. He has a lot of power in this world now. So we always have to be on guard. Um, but his time will come. We know it as believers, and he knows it. He knows
He
it.
sure does.
Yeah, but he's going to do as much damage as possible. And yet, before that time, but God has told us that for a little while we're going to have trouble. The world as we're going to have it. But to take heart, because He has overcome the world, and so yet we have to prepare ourselves with truth, and that's God's truth,
Mm-hmm.
not talking about all this other truth, even though it's good to know, to see it, to see the battle raging.
Mm-hmm.
But so that we can just counter the deception of
Yep.
the enemy. And I found a quote by Abraham Lincoln,
Okay.
and it is simple: let the people know the truth, and the country will be safe.
Well, you know what? The simplest things are the best and most powerful.
Right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of times government, they think they know better. I mean, now it's at a point where they just don't want us to know the truth. But a lot of elites,
Yeah, it's
they know,
intentional.
right? But they think that they know better. That if we knew the truth, that we would panic. The truth of whatever, the banks, which they're not really talking about, right? I mean, more banks have collapsed than what happened in 2008. But is it on the news? No. Huh? Okay, so
Right. It was 24/7 coverage in 2008, 2009.
right. And that tells me that it's not of their doing. That's what that tells me, because they're hiding it. But anyway, I think that Lincoln was right. He was a good president, a good man, and we can handle the truth, and we will make the right decisions. Kennedy said the same thing, that when the American people, when they know that he had confidence in us, and so it's a
Yeah.
battle for the souls of mankind, that mankind that's raging in the heavenly realm, and we're seeing it here, and it's that simple, and it's that
What a
complex,
time to be alive, right?
right? For such a time as this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm comfy because I know who's in control.
Me too. I do. So to answer our question for our podcast title, are we in a battle of good versus evil? Yes.
Mhm.
And it's right before our eyes. And what's really interesting is so many years ago, and it actually probably wasn't that long ago, maybe more than 5 or 6 years ago, things used to scare me. And I'm not even talking about government or politics or anything like that, but um, I it's I don't know. It's just interesting to me that like things would freak me out. So if I go out at night and I'd hear a noise, or I'm camping and I hear a noise outside, like, what's that? Or uh, something happens and inflation's coming and I don't have a lot of money. I'm scared. Like, what's going to happen? Uh, or I watch a scary movie. Or I'm, get freak myself out in the house late at night. Do you know anything?
Yeah.
Stuff going on in the world. And now, like, nothing. Nothing, like, I am so cozy. I'm shocked at myself, to be honest with you, because
Has your faith grown?
it has
That's it.
actually.
That's it.
So I've always been Christian, but I will say the whole awakening that's been happening, like that we've been talking about since 2017,
Mhm.
is not just informational. It's not just waking up to what's happening in the world and what people are up to and the corruption and
Mhm.
the craziness that's happening, but it's also a religious awakening.
Absolutely.
And yeah, like I never felt the Holy Spirit 7 years ago, but I do now. If I ask for confirmation, I get it.
That's
And
awesome.
it is so
That's
awesome.
so cool.
It is so awesome. But are we in a battle of good versus evil? Yes. Do I have a clip I really wanted to show? I do before we go because
Okay.
because this is just and it's not a positive clip, it's a negative.
Uh-oh.
I meant to show it earlier
That's okay. But
when
before
we
you
were
play it,
talking about the psyops stuff. I think people need to see this clip if they're not following me. That's why I'm going to show it. So
okay.
so real quick, I have it pinned on my Truth Social. So I'm gonna I have this. Did you see this clip that I posted, Carrie, about Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so I will play it, but basically he said, well, behaviors are going to have to change. You have to force behaviors. And at BlackRock, we are forcing behaviors. Now, BlackRock, if people don't know who they are, huge financial investment company. They control a lot of money in the corporate world, and
Mhm.
they also buy up a lot of real estate. They have so
Mhm.
many.
They're the
They're,
largest real estate holdings in the nation.
yeah, their hands are in very many pockets.
Yeah.
And but let me just play so you can
Okay.
hear. Tell me if you don't hear it too, but I'm going to play it.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock, we are forcing behaviors.
I mean, can you believe that?
Yeah. But didn't they also just pull out of the ESG because it
Yeah,
wasn't good for business? That's forced behavior. It
yeah. For ESG, for folks that don't know, that's the environmental, social, and
governance.
governance
Yeah.
kind of credit for corporations.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's an uphill battle for them, and and they're losing. I mean, it's just, it's
Yeah,
so absurd, but they think that they can do that. They like to play God. They want to be all powerful, have all the control.
right.
No, but Maurice, she commented, God won.
Oh,
God won.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
Amen.
that's right. Oh, death, where is your sting? Right, and
Hmm.
and because of our belief, we have two, you know.
Yeah.
Our future is secure, and so no matter what happens.
Absolutely. And I think for people who might ask, well, what can I do? If we're in this battle of good versus evil, what should I do?
Now that is a good question worth pondering.
I think a lot of people ask that. And
Yeah,
honestly, you have to put your faith in God.
that's absolutely.
Even though yes, you can be in this world and make positive changes and positive impacts.
Mhm,
I truly believe like positivity has a domino effect, loving
mm,
people, doing nice things for people,
mhm,
little gestures, but also like uh going to your local like if you want to get as far as politics goes, make sure you understand who you're voting for. And
yeah,
if you're not going to get involved yourself locally, which local action equals national impact, we want patriots and different folks who, and I don't care if you're left or right, to be honest with you, if you like don't agree with what's happening in the madness of the world, please don't let your party be taken over
mhm,
by these maniacs. We've got plenty in both parties.
that's true.
Otherwise, make sure you understand who you're voting for. If you don't get into politics, make sure you're doing nice things for people. Don't let it scare you if you see somebody doing something heroic and they get punished for it.
Mhm,
Don't let that put fear in you.
mhm.
Still be that heroic person.
Absolutely, we
And
have
like January 6th, all those protesters that were arrested and they're on trial, don't let that stop you from protesting and having your voice heard peacefully.
The ones that didn't do anything, they will be vindicated. You know,
They will.
it's just, it's been a hard red pill or hard lesson to walk.
Right.
It's been
Right. So I just don't have fear. Just reach out to God and do what you can do while you're here on this beautiful earth.
Mhm.
You know, that's my closing thought.
Love God, love people,
Love God, love people.
and trust God.
And yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Carrie, I really enjoyed tonight. We
you.
went a long time again. What's
Ooh, we did. I thought, oh, it'll be shorter. It's just the two of us. Nope.
no.
Thanks everyone for hanging out with us. We just
Yeah.
loved everyone's comments in chat. It was just fun. And Neb's just
Yes.
great to be with you.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, share it. You know, if you got some friends that would like our podcast, I'd love for you to share it too. We would love for you to share it. Sorry.
Yes.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
I can see clear.